Hey everybody, welcome to the Book Leads Impactful Books for Life and Leadership. I'm your series host and leadership performance coach, John Jaramillo. This podcast series is about getting to the books that have impacted the people in my network, the leaders in my network, my growing network, new connections, old connections. So these guests are all great leads that I want to work with to find those books that have made an impact on their lives, their work, their businesses, whatever it may be. All those worlds intersect. And in this series, I cover three categories of books. The first category, where they're sharing a book with me I haven't read. The second category, where we're both covering a book that we have read, whether specifically for that series or we read it in our past lives before the series even began. And then the third category is when I have the author and or publisher on to talk about the book that they've put out, whether recently or in the past, just to give it a face, a tone, to give it some background, some story, some experience, to kind of give it some meat and some substance to know where that book came from. And in this episode, my guest is Connor DeLaney. An innovator at heart, Connor is always bringing new ideas to the table and challenging the norm to find better solutions for both the teams and communities he is a part of. If you ask him, he combines his passions for education and marketing to empower others to meet their business and revenue goals, and loves building unforgettable experiences through groundbreaking industry events and engaged, passionate communities. In his free time, you'll find him watching the Yankees game, reading a new book, or on the hiking trail on his next adventure, or running marathons. Connor, I've seen you
Or a
posted
little
about
bit of that
marathons.
too, yeah.
A little bit of that. It's more than the little bit of marathon running that I've done. And Connor's now in this select group of people this is now his third appearance on the series. In November 2021, he was on episode 12, where we covered the book They Ask You Answer, a revolutionary approach to inbound sales, content marketing, and today's digital consumer by Marcus Sheridan. And then we met up again in June of 2023. Hard to believe that it was that long after that first meeting, for episode 56, where he shared I Hear You, the surprisingly simple skill behind extraordinary relationships by Michael Sorensen. So those that have listened to those episodes, you'll recognize why I have Connor back on here for another conversation. You'll know that reason. You can see the kind of through line to the books that he shared that are about marketing and sales and just relationship building. It's the core of who he is when it comes to the work that he does. Everything he shares on his social media is very impactful, pun intended, random but
Never
intended.
gets old, right, John?
But it is incredible how much you're out there sharing what you're doing for your job. And I had joked with him. He had sent me his name up on screen, how he wanted it a couple of months ago, but he's always shifting. There's always new roles coming up, so I had to make sure that I still had the right information. He's just always out there educating people, and he's one of the most genuine people I've ever met when it comes to LinkedIn, and really noting in his content that he wants to help and share people get their message across. So, Connor, thank you so much again for joining me for the third time.
Oof. And it's good to be back, John. It never gets old either.
I appreciate that. No, it's a good time, man. We're both about in different fields, but we're both about helping people getting better, learning as much as we can. I think both of us have just that voracious appetite for just learning. Um, I hope I come across the way you do, where you're sharing information, you're trying to help people get better, you're putting it out there, reminding them what they're capable of, but it never comes across as you have the definitive answer, that you're always evolving. And it doesn't mean that what you've shared to date doesn't mean anything, but it just means you're always evolving, always updating, always conveying like the newest information, your own thought leadership. So yeah, I'm grateful that you're here for this conversation. Now, the first question is always, what are you up to today? Who are you today? Can you give the audience a breakdown of what the work looks like that you're doing in the day to day?
Yeah. So my role, as John has said, has probably changed every time that I've been on the show. But today, where I find myself is I am leading a sales team, a small sales team of 3 that is focused on helping companies and businesses across all different industries take more control of their sales and marketing. A lot of teams have always traditionally outsourced things, and it's not because outsourcing is bad, but it's because they don't know what they don't know. And so I spend a lot of my time working with businesses who are frustrated, who are struggling to to discover a different path. And what Impact does is we help coach and train teams how to implement a system that we're going to talk about today, to own their sales and marketing strategy in house. On top of that, not only do I have those one-to-one conversations, but the title shifted even more of I now go out and I am speaking, and I speak to small groups and I speak to larger audiences about the world of sales and marketing today. It's changed a lot even since I was last on here, John. The last 2 years has been a quite a cyclone of shifts, and we've seen the world move with, there's the buzzwords of AI, but even just buying behavior is continuing to change and evolve. And so my role, whether in sales or in speaking, is to share what we're seeing, share how you can show up differently. And I think that's where a lot of our conversation today is going to go.
So what does that look like from the last time we spoke to now? You mentioned those changes. I don't even doubt it just because everything just has changed exponentially. So for you, what has that looked like in your industry, in your field, your specialization? What have you seen in the last almost 2 years since the last time we spoke on here?
Yeah, there's principles that land within it, and then there's the actual behaviors and more the tactics. So the principles that I've seen become true more and more is buyers require more trust and more education than ever in their buying decisions. So when they go to purchase something, they're doing more research up front. They're vetting more often. They're qualifying or disqualifying themselves further and further
Mhm.
before they get in touch with you as a business. And what that leads to is there's a lot of companies that are getting calls, but they're then seeing deals stalling, or they're seeing buyer indecision because there's a lack of information out there for a customer to make decisions. It's way more in the dark than it used to be. And it's going to continue to be when people don't go clicking blue links on Google anymore. They're getting their little snippets that say, here's your AI generated response. And then they just go on with their lives. So we're seeing buyers who want to get more information getting it without showing everything. So businesses are operating in this slight more unknown. And what that leads to again is there's more stalled deals of people who aren't convinced they need to buy yet, and more buying indecision. It's leading to traffic and leads going down, especially for our websites. We're seeing less and less
Mhm.
people actually end up on the sites. But even beyond that, the things we used to do are not working as well as they used to do. Meaning, pay per click, it's more expensive, but more and more folks are saying, I'm not getting the results that I want. Um, the traditional SEO world is taking a hit, and the way that buyers get information is changing. And what that forces companies to do is either stick to their guns and try to wait out the storm. Spoiler, the storm's not going away. This is just the new reality. But on the flip side, it's evolve and elevate and adapt. And so the things that I'm seeing more and more is there's a lot of companies out there hoping what they've always done works. And there's a handful of companies that are saying, I need to get ahead of this. I need to keep my business on the leading edge versus reacting later.
So what have you seen because it's growing exponentially ever since it was a buzzword to now it's not a buzzword, it's just kind of front of field. What have you seen in terms of the evolution of AI in your field, your industry since that last time we spoke? Because that, I mean, it's just leaps and bounds. It's not
Yeah.
it's more exponential than I think anything else that we've ever dealt with. So what does that look like now compared to a couple of years ago?
Yeah, so there's the November 2022 is when ChatGPT comes out, and it takes the world by storm because it's this new exciting technology. And in the past, what we were seeing was your content online, your digital presence served what we'll call two masters. It served your customers or your buyers, and it served search engines. And over the last 2 years, what we've seen grow and evolve is there's this third master we serve, which is AI search, which is people that go on to, we'll use ChatGPT as the easy example. They go on and they say, hey, and they can now talk to it too, right? That's all new and evolved. They're going and saying, all right, ChatGPT, I'm buying this. Help me figure out how to purchase this. And it's going to pull all this information from all over the internet and give you that answer without you needing to go read an article on a website or go into that piece. It's people are starting their journeys more and more. So how do companies get found in that search space when they say, I'm looking for the best, I don't know, the best TV monitors or the best, lawn care companies in my area? people aren't going on Google and searching that as much as they used to. We're now seeing a shift to people go ask an AI tool, help me find this. And it's getting them a more direct, succinct answer than them having to read a 1,200 word article.
Yeah,
They're getting into the give me the 50-word answer. Okay, here's the best person, here's why.
exactly.
So we're seeing that shift more and more. And I don't like to say that it's like, this is a new restart, it's the new internet. The technology itself is reflective of that. But what we're seeing is that buyers want to move quicker without as much friction. And so customers are fighting against what companies want, which is, well, I want you to get in front of the salesperson and then that salesperson's going to wow you. Customers don't live for that anymore. Instead, they want to get 80, 85, 90% of the way through, and they'll call when they have to, but they want to be fully convinced that they're going to walk in and know what they're getting. So I would say those three masters is what we're seeing more and more of. Is there's more weight in this new one, and we're seeing search fall apart or really fall down. Customers are still always going to be the core, but we're serving our customers through these engines to get us there.
So aside from those masters, if you will, what have you seen in terms of community?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's all these, you know, town pages, town talks pages where people just go to people in their community and ask a question, who's got a person for this, who's got a person for that, and why.
Yeah.
Uh, how do you measure that kind of thing where people are going into their community before even going online, whether it's a Google search, whether it's Chat GPT? How do you, I don't know, how do you compensate for that?
That piece will never go away, but it's more prominent than ever because there's a lack of trust in the market. And there's what I like to call a trust deficit. And it's
Hmm.
not because they don't trust the companies or the word on the internet, but they're just not sure what's right and what's not when it comes to there's all this input happening. They don't know if they can trust the output. So they go to the people in the communities they trust. And it's beyond just, local neighborhood forums is one area, but business leader forums. I go speak to groups that are, an entrepreneurs organization or they're in LX Council or Vistage, and they all trust each other a lot as business owners and business leaders across different industries, let alone in their own. They all talk to each other about who are you working with, what's working, they want to hear it from real people. And so, in a way, to your question, it's referrals and word of mouth are almost seeing a bit of a resurgence. And it's not that they ever went away, but because there's not as much trust right now, because
Hmm.
there's all these different things happening, they're going back to those grassroots. Hey, if you've have you had this problem? Yeah, and here's how I solved it. That might work for you. Great, I need to do the same. Community is more at the core than it's ever been. But then once people hear about you, you need to build trust as a business through your website, through your content strategy, everything in between, to reinforce why you're a brand that should be not only a known brand, but a trusted brand.
So, what are the reasons you've seen it in your work with Impact the couple of years that I know you've been there? How many years is it now?
It's going on 6 years this year.
Yeah. So in that period of time, what do you think? And the thing is, like you're right, COVID is right in the middle of that.
Big time.
So what do you think are the reasons that trust is so low? Obviously, there's poor communication. There are just websites or information that's just not useful. But what are the major factors you think that really drive customers' trust downward?
I think to where I would start rather is customers are less willing and less patient than they were before to get what they need. Things like pricing information, because when everything went online, companies had to react and adjust pretty fast of, all right, we're not going to be able to go door to door because no one wants us in their homes in 2020. And it forced this buying revolution, I would say, of customers want the information they need faster and less frictionful than ever before. And I would say, and you can tell me, John, I don't think we're ever going back to people are okay if I have to call to get a quote or if I have to, request more information. Instead, they're saying, I'm just going to find a company that gives me the answer. You think about your Google search uh, like how you go about doing so. If you go to a website and they don't have the information you want, what do? You don't really keep looking. You just go back and look for the next result.
Hmm.
Now
Yep.
we're finding an even faster way to do that of just tell me the result. Whoever gives it to me is probably going to win the business.
Yeah.
We need to be sure that as companies and as business leaders, we are presenting that information to anyone that's going to buy from us. So I think the big shift was buyers had to go online and they needed to find information, and the companies that provide that information were winning right away. And that's always going to be the case, is the more that you can present an idea of, we talk about price. You don't have to say this is exactly what it's going to cost for you, but frankly, buyers just want to understand, how does pricing work?
Yeah.
What should I expect in buying this? You give them in a range and the factors that drive prices up and prices down. You give them an idea of why certain companies cost more and certain companies cost
Yep.
less, and where you land as a business. You're going to win a lot more business than you think you are, because customers are doing that before they reach out to you. And frankly, they're not really going to be convinced or upsold unless they have a ballpark that they're starting with.
And it's not all about money.
Most of the time, it's not. Most of the
It's
time, it's
not
understanding how it works. Penny
exactly.
pinchers are not great customers. They're just a transaction. But if you want great customers and great long-time referral partners, it's not gonna be because you gave them a discount. It's gonna be
Mhm.
because they understood the value of why you are presenting what you
Absolutely.
are. And it's not to say you're a value-based business, but it's more to do with, you are communicating how this works and you built trust with them. And even if you are more, most of the time the buyer is going to pick the company that they trust can do the best job. And that might cost more, but they're willing to invest that because they
Oh,
believe it.
absolutely. Because if you're gonna pay a discounted rate relative to something else, but then in the end, they don't do it right and you have to go get somebody to fix it, or it's not the right quality or whatever it may be, now it's gonna maybe cost you double because maybe you have to have whatever it is or whatever the item is replaced or redone, so
That buyer indecision is the scariest part. Is people don't want to have buyer's remorse. And so it leads them to live with where they are until they feel confident that it's going to get done right. They don't have the money to throw around that they used to, whether that's economic factors, which is obviously a lot going on there. There's a lot of reasons why that's the case. But the most important one is they don't want to waste their money. So they're going
yeah,
to make a more informed buying decision than ever.
yeah, and just respect them.
Mhm.
Because I've worked with so many companies, whether it's stuff around the house, in the yard, lawn, siding, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And the companies that are like, and we realize that this is above the norm.
Mhm.
We realize you had mentioned you were looking into this other company as well, and that their price was down here. But here's what you get with this. This is the reason we're charging what we're charging. As long as somebody can clarify that messaging as to what goes into the price, that they've actually taken the time to understand that that's a concern of the customer,
Yeah.
that to me, it shows you're in good hands.
Right.
So again, it's not just about price. You want to know, it's that the pound for pound, which one is it? Which one gets you more value, support, respect, even courtesy?
Right.
Even how you are with me over the phone, if we're talking by phone, demonstrates a lot. So there's so many different factors that go into it. I wouldn't want to, I think everybody's in this industry at some point in some way, but it's evolving so much that the target's always moving. It's incredible.
It is. Yeah, it is a you're never going to fully catch up, especially when it comes to conversations around AI. It's constantly growing and evolving, but the principles still live true. And frankly,
Yeah.
they're more present than ever before when it comes to what we're in the business of, which is we're frankly in the business of trust and education, in giving buyers more control of the buying experience than we ever have before. And that's
Yeah.
not to say letting them make mistakes, but it's to say buyers are going to get further down the funnel, and if you're the one they're learning from, they're the one that you're buying from too.
Yeah. Connor, so to understand, who we have sitting in front of us talking about all this stuff, knowing the ins and outs, can you tell us what your path looked like from, I don't know, your education to now? You've gone into this a few times in the past episodes, so you don't have to go that in depth because I want people to go check out those other episodes, the
Yeah,
previous episodes, because they were great. So I mean the highlights of your path, why you went in certain directions, where you picked up certain mindsets that you're using today, just so we get a sense for who's introducing the book that we're going to be talking about.
Sure. Yeah. So the quick and easy, like John, you had said in my intro, like education's always kind of been a passion and a focus for me. There was a time where I thought I would be an educator myself, and I started going to school for that. And I realized it wasn't, there were parts that I'm passionate about and parts that I'm not. And so I shifted into more of a marketing and business role because it's something I enjoyed. And what I found over years of doing what I do is at the core of what I'm about, it's how do I be more of a trusted advisor, someone that's here to help and guide, whether it's businesses or individuals, create their own paths, but find success in what has been proven to be true. And so, even now, today, so at Impact, I've had enough roles to fill a Rolodex, right? Like, I have moved across the company from content training to running an events team to building a community to product management and building a platform to now leading a sales team. And all of that has come together for me to confidently be able to say, I understand so much about how businesses operate and the different facets of their operation to be able to explain to them, here's how all of these things that in the book that we're going to talk about, Endless Customers, how all of these components play into every aspect of your business and every touch point that you have. And my job is to help guide you by asking difficult questions, making the important recommendation, even when you don't want to hear it, but you know you need to, and guiding you towards a path that's going to say, here's how you can build a sustainable, scalable business and create the vision that you have for the future of your company. That's what I've been about. That's what it's always kind of been about. And it's been a pretty remarkable, in my opinion. And it's hard because every time I sit down with you, it's like this reflective moment of everything that my journey's been about has led to a point of wherever I go next, I'm now learning what's at the core of me as a professional, but me as a person.
Mm.
I grow and learn that through the experiences, through the learnings, through the conversations that I have with literally business leaders all over the world and their teams to help them be successful. And if at the end of the day, my job, I want it to be, I change someone's life and I helped grow someone's business to be able to make them, create a hero within their community, within their company, within their team, someone that said, I am so much better than I used to be. And I'm so glad that I got to have these moments and learnings and coaching and everything in between with Connor and Connor's team. If that's what people leave with, yeah, I want them to have great, successful businesses, but I want them to say, I feel more fulfilled than ever in the work that I do and how important it is to everyone I interact with.
Yeah, and I think I've always been a curious person, but I'm 46 years old and I'm still finding things out. I had a
Never stops, John. Never
it
stops.
just never stops. And you may hear that in life, you're always learning, it never stops, you can always evolve, but it's incredible how you may be confident in what you're doing and what you're sharing, and you still learn based on a different conversation you had in somebody maybe in your field in a different area or in a different field or in a different country, whatever it may be, how they see the world, even if they're sharing it with you, what you can learn from them just by how you respond, how you listen, how you share, how you problem solve, how you exchange information. So it's incredible. All I can say is you already know it's not going to stop, but it's incredible that even me pushing 50, it's still you're still finding these nuggets of wisdom that you had inside you and you realize and recognize where they came from. So when it comes to your demeanor, the way you are, what you want for your customers, where do you think that comes from? Where do you trace that back to?
Hmm. I I think it always starts with, how you grow up, and there's an easy answer of like it's how I was raised. But I think what I discovered, and there's always so many moments that this leads up to, is the willingness to go above and beyond for the people you care about. And I think my family's always shown that of like being able to travel and go do things, but even with friends or the businesses that I work with, a lot of the ones that do the best work are the ones that say, "Look, I'm not just here to get a paycheck. I'm here to help someone become successful." And usually what that leads to is they're going to pay me more because they believe in what I'm doing.
Mhm.
I don't know if there's a specific moment or other pieces, but there's just a culmination of when you observe people from a young age saying, "Oh, I will come pick up the kids for you." There's all these little moments of like not keeping score, that leads to in relationships and families and friendships. If you're keeping score, you're usually in it for the wrong reason. But if you're going above and beyond and taking that time to do that, I think when I learned that, and I probably learned it later than I observed it. There's a time where I had a conversation with someone about, relationships. Like I've been dating the same person for about 7 years, 8 years now, and there's next steps coming soon probably. And what that means is, wink, wink. Um, but I remember having a conversation with someone who was much older than I am, and they said, "Just make sure you never keep score." And I asked them what that means, and they said, if you go clean the dishes, you can't say, "Well, I did it last time, you do it this time." If you start playing that game, it starts to cause friction. And I thought about all the times in my life where I kept score, and it
Hmm,
was just this
that's a
like
good one.
it was just this time of, well, I had to do this last time. Why can't my brothers do it? Versus, you know what? I am going to still step up. And it's not like I want people to get taken advantage of. But when I think about the demeanor that I come with, I'm not here to just do the thing and then be like, oh, I have to do that again. If it's that important, I'm going to make sure that I do it each time. And it's learning that balance too. I think the biggest thing that I've had to learn is it doesn't mean I should take on everything, because there's been times in my life where I've driven myself into the ground trying to do everything that I can, rather than focusing on, hey, I really can't do that right now, but I'm happy to help later. That's still doing the right thing, but it's also doing the right thing for you and for them by saying, I don't want
Yeah.
to half ass something. I want to give my full effort, but it means, yeah, I don't owe you one. And I hope you don't feel that way. I can't do it right now at the level that I want to. And so you learn that value of yourself as much as the value of others and the outputs you expect.
So how do you reconcile your childhood to now? Does it make sense from who you were as a kid, however you were as a kid, that this is the work you're doing? Even if you didn't know this is what the area, I mean, you went to college for one thing, came out
Sure.
another, but even if you didn't know this is where you were going to lead or end up, does it make sense from your childhood and why that you're doing this?
Um, I think it does, but it's less of like, it's more again back to like principles of how you grow up. And yeah, sales was never on my radar, man. Like it was almost, you grow up and you're like, sales and marketing, they clash, and frankly they don't. That's obviously one thing that you hear a lot of people say, and it's part of what I help companies figure out, is how to make sure that they are working collaboratively, because the best companies do. But sales was never on my radar, but the work that I do isn't the slimy salesperson, the used car, you got to buy, I can cut prices. I'm not a fan of that stuff. It's very much knowing your value, knowing what you deliver, and being able to communicate that. And I think where I've always wanted to be great and am learning how to be is being a great communicator, asking great questions, giving really thoughtful responses, taking the time to think. One thing that I learned a long time ago and really haven't applied until my professional career was, it's very easy to get caught up in listening and responding as fast as you can, not listening to understand. And there's the 7 habits that you can always think of, but
Mhm.
just as a principle, it's like, how do you take a deep breath before you give a response and allow yourself to think versus emotionally respond? And
Mhm.
that was something I struggled with a lot, but I think about the world that I've really tried to create for myself is more focused on that, and being receptive to things like feedback and receptive to thoughts. And I'm probably going down a rabbit hole that you weren't expecting, John, but that idea is really where I come back to. It's just like, I try to do that in everything that I do. Take that time, but also I think it does map out to where I am today. And it's probably going to be these skills that just now I'm really focused on that in my role. I may not be every single day for the rest of my life, but this is forcing me to refine this sword and get really good with it so I can take on the next beast, whichever that's going to be in the future.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's a rabbit hole, but it's a good rabbit hole because you're walking yourself through all these different thoughts that are coming at you based on the question I asked. And what's great about this series is it's longer form. I don't mind rabbit holes. It's not just an interview where it's like question, answer, question. It is a conversation. So I like, when people may find in real time where certain things came from, or they're thinking it out loud, tracing it back to where the source material is for who they are today and the work they're doing. So I appreciate all of that, man. Thank you so much. And A few more questions before we jump into the book. What do you consider your superpower? I don't think that was on the list of questions the last time I
Ooh,
had you on, but
ooh.
because I'm always curious about what somebody knows they're good at, because I don't think people give themselves enough credit. So I always want to hear, okay, what's your superpower? What's your thing you do? Other people may do it well or as well, whatever it may be, but what's one thing that it'd be hard for somebody to take away from you because it's such a part of what you deliver?
It's funny that you ask this because I had a speaking engagement about 2 weeks ago in mid-April, and I don't know when this will come out, so I'll say mid-April. And right afterwards, I had someone come up who is a client of Impact's, and she came over to me and she said, I hear a lot of people speak, but it's very rare that I feel the way that I feel after you present." And I said, "Why is that?" Because I'm not a emotional firecracker when it comes to presenting. I'm pretty cool, calm, and collected, and so I was surprised a little bit to hear, the way that I feel. And she said to me, "You're one of the only speakers I've ever seen that makes me feel honest with myself and empowered to go get better." And I said, "Wow, that's pretty cool. Tell me more about that." And what she shared with me was, when I started in this role that you helped me get hired for and get into, I was so scared that I was going to screw up and fail. And you created this space for me that allowed me to say, I feel confident enough that I can go try and make mistakes and learn. And frankly, she said the most important thing was ask questions. I felt like I could come to you, which I don't always feel with everyone, that I can go to
Mm,
them and ask. And so I think my superpower in a sentence is, I'm someone that people trust can help them get better and they're willing to be vulnerable with. And so they look to me as someone that they can be their genuine selves and also know that I'm going to help them learn by sometimes having the difficult conversation, but they're willing to hear that feedback in a way that it's not going to feel combative, but that they're very open to. And I think I've found, and that's just over time of now managing people and learning how to deliver feedback when it's not the easy feedback,
mm,
people feel very safe to have an honest conversation with me. And they're not afraid of the way that I deliver feedback's going to be what they need to hear, not always being their friend.
yeah.
But it's always, "I really appreciate you sharing that with me." And I never knew how important that was until I started managing other people, but also leaning into, how do I help my clients be successful? When she shared that story with me, it was this light bulb. And so it's something that's always on my mind now, but it's, if I create that moment for every single person, it means I can help anyone get better and that they feel they can come to me and say the same thing of, "I have feedback for you. Can I give this to you?"
Yeah, exactly.
I'd say
Exactly.
that's
There's that all around respect because they know where you're coming from.
yeah,
So I think a major part of what she shared with you is part of your personality, right? No one can really easily mimic that, right? That's just the
right.
core of who you are. They got to figure their own stuff out. But when it comes to feedback and giving feedback without making it formulaic, how do you look at feedback so that you can provide it, even the tough feedback, excuse me, in such a way that it does land, in such a way that it's not seen as critical, that it is done out of support, right? It sounds like common sense. Well, if I'm giving you feedback, it's because I want to support you. No, but there's a way you have to present that to somebody.
Yeah,
I don't know if you have a formula, maybe you do, but what's your approach when it comes to feedback? How do you handle that?
I think of this as like the superpower that's still a raw superpower, in the sense that like channeling it is the challenge, and knowing how to create it every single time. And it's one of
Mm,
those things that's like, just do it. And I'm learning how to communicate it, of like how it works, because I've had people observe it and they say, "Well, he wouldn't have responded that way, or she would have done this instead of that. Why'd she do that with you?" There's a piece that I'm learning how to do, but I would say the way that it comes to life is, I never want things to be surprising. I always want things to have context, and I always want them to provide where they feel they did great and where they feel they could do better before I share anything. Because all of everything within feedback, the last thing, I think of like the example of a performance review. The most important statement within that is, or the most important word is review. I
Mhm.
never want it to be something that's downright surprising to them. And so it's, you never want to bottle up feedback. You always want to
Yeah.
deliver it in real time, all that stuff. But what I've always found is when I am chatting with a team member or chatting with a client and I need to say something that's going to hurt their feelings, the hard, tough love kind of deal, most of the time they know it's coming and it should never be a surprise. But I also think in the way that you deliver it, it's delivering it in a sense that's like curious, it's founded in wanting to be helpful, but it usually starts with a question. And I think that's where most people make a mistake is when they're delivering feedback, it starts with so look, you've been falling behind on this. And it's not the moment that you need, which is, hey, I get the sense you've been struggling with this a little bit. How do you feel things are going right now? Most of
Yeah.
the you're gonna say, I am struggling a bit. But it forces them, and force is the wrong word, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
It
Yeah. Yeah.
allows them perhaps to open up. But you can make a little bit of an assumption to help them say, yeah, I've really been struggling here. Or on the flip side, no, no, no. I feel like things are going great. But what makes you say that? You don't want
Mm.
to let them get their guard up, but usually your assumption is going to be right. And usually they know it's coming if you're working with the right people who are open to feedback in the first place. So, John, I don't have a formula for it. And I hope to one day. And it's something that as I become more of a leader within this, that I'm going to have to learn how to deliver this, but every person's going to receive feedback differently. I think my biggest learning with the manager that I have today, who's on the leadership team here at Impact, the first time that we started working together, she said, "Hey, how do you best receive feedback? And if I need you to if something's falling behind, how do I need to communicate with you?" And I'd never been asked that before.
Ah, me
But
either. Me either.
but what I responded with was, "Look, it's really important to me that you tell me what you need. And you don't beat around the bush. I don't need you to softball it. Sometimes I just need you to say, "Hey, Connor, I need you to get this done by this date." And you know what she does? She tells me when she needs things done and I can get it done. Some people need it completely differently. They need it to be talked through. They need context. They need to ask questions. For me, I'm more of a look, if it's something I need to improve, I need you to tell me. And if I have questions, I'm going to ask them. But there's different people receive feedback in different ways. And feedback's much more than it's like one example of all of this. But when I think
Mhm.
about the superpower conversations, like my ability to rally and build trust with people very quickly, I think is my superpower. And feedback's a great example of that of can I get people all in the same room, breathing the same air and understanding this pressure, and then where they're going to go from there.
Yeah. No, that's a great example from that manager and her asking from the get-go, from the start of your relationship, how do you prefer to get feedback?
Right.
Um, just because it opens it up from the very beginning that there will be feedback.
Yeah.
And it opens it up
Very
from the
true.
very beginning that I want to make sure that you feel you're a partner in that feedback.
Mhm.
The right kind of feedback conversation isn't just a one way, diatribe of any kind. it's
Right.
it's a conversation, it's reception, it's follow up and whatnot. So I love when people can preface the operations, the relationship with, okay, here are the expectations. Let's
Yep.
just start with expectations, because if we go into it haphazardly, I won't know when to step in at what time to say what. So I appreciate those kind of conversations that happen from the start. So speaking of management and development and communication, what does leadership mean to you? What does a great example of leadership look like?
Ooh-wee. I feel like every time you ask this one and I still react the same way because it's such
I was gonna say
a
that one I think was pretty standard. That one's been there before.
Yeah, that
But
one's been there before.
the thing is, even though I have asked you that in every one,
Yep,
the way you answer today may be different from 2 years ago. And then I think it was 18 months before that.
right.
That's why I like, even for repeat and three-peat guests, I like posing that question, because all of these similar types of questions, because that person has evolved in the last year, 2 years, 4 years, whatever it may be. So with your new management experience, with your new speaking experience, there's something that you're going to take away that's going to evolve your leadership and advance it forward. So I'm curious even more now because of all those additional experiences you've had. So what
Yeah.
do you think? What does leadership mean to you? What does clutch leadership look like?
So I'll take it down two paths, and I'm not going to go too deep into either, but I'll start here. I think leadership always must have a sense of curiosity and openness. The amount of leaders I talk to that say that would never work for us or our team would never be into that describes the kind of leadership culture that they've created. And it's usually not one that I feel is successful. The ones that are against, again, receiving feedback's an easy example, but the
Yeah.
ones that aren't willing to hear the voices of their team are the ones that typically are more tyrants or dictators of the company versus leaders of the company. I think the ability to delegate is part of that curiosity of willingness to give things up. And what I found in impact, what I found all across the world in speaking has been the teams who everything falls on the leadership team are the ones that struggle and the ones that struggle to scale and to grow. And so curiosity comes into who could help me figure this out versus I have to figure everything out. And great leaders, not just delegators, but are empowerers of their team. They're the people that go ahead and drive this forward and allow their team to take on responsibility versus feeling like their team's just a bunch of doers. The companies that succeed in the work that I do, but also in most worlds, have great teams that they trust and they believe in. And it's because they're always curious and open minded to allowing how could someone else solve this problem? And how can I provide them leadership and guidance to do that? That would be the first big one, and maybe that's like 2 within 1. The one other piece that I think about with leadership is and I think of the example of the manager that I have today, and her name's Becca. She's awesome. You guys can go find her whenever you want. She does some great stuff on she's learning how to get into the LinkedIn game, which is fun, and she's sharing a lot of those responsibilities, but I think for leaders like her, it's all about how do I constantly challenge my team to be their best version? And so curiosity and delegation are one thing, but I just had a performance review with Becca and things went really well, which is great. One, I still have a job, but two, I'm doing really well in what I do, right? That's always the joke. But the thing that she came to me with was, how can I help you perform better in all aspects of your life and make sure that you always have control of your work? And so for her, she
Mm.
challenged me to say, there's some areas that I see when you're struggling that can cause a spiral. And I want you to have the tools in life, but the tools in work to be able to do that. And so from a leader, she is always looking at how can I help Connor perform at the highest level and have the tools in his toolbox to manage everything because your work life and your personal life are so intertwined. I never loved the idea of work-life balance, but I think that
Mm.
there's work-life satisfaction that comes into play. And maybe that's a different there's another book that I'll have to send to you, John, that's a different day. But
What is it? You gotta mention it, though.
I'll grab the title for you because I wanna
Okay.
make sure you get it right, but I can picture it, but I'll get the title for you. But work-life satisfaction is about, like, I may work more than I hang out over here or vice versa, but how am I satisfied and growing in both? That's what's important to me,
Yeah.
and for her, she's always communicated, "I never want you to be sacrificing either, even if you are." I'm a hard worker. I'm the person that will work longer hours than other people because I love what I do, but I also know that she's going to challenge me to say, "Don't make sure you never sacrifice on either side for the sake of the other side." And
Yeah.
so she's always pushing me, and that's where I think the other half of great leadership is thinking about you as the human, not just the employee.
That's huge. But those are 2 great ones, curiosity and everything that goes into that and the delegation, and then just realizing that the person that you're leading is bigger, is more. There's more depth to them, more substance than what they're doing for you.
Right.
And that leaders have such a powerful role to make or break the person that they lead, the people that they lead, and not just in their role, but everything that happens at work. There's no clear threshold that you walk across and everything. It's not like Severance on
Mhm.
Apple
Mhm.
TV. Have you seen
Mhm.
that
Oh,
show?
yeah, I sure have. Yeah, yeah.
It's not like that. Maybe that's why they made the show, who knows? But it's not like that where everything at work stays at work, everything at home stays at home, and there's that disconnection. a
Mhm.
bad experience with a leader at work can ripple through you into your drive at home, into your relationship with your kids or your friends or your family, into your work into the next day. So that's powerful that she asked you and acknowledges that she wants to make sure that you have whatever you want to call it. Some people may call it balance, satisfaction, which I get, by the way, just because you're like me where you're fascinated by what you do, that it's a part of me. It's a part in a healthy way, hopefully for me.
Yeah, yeah. That's
But
always the key, right?
it's just it's incredible when you do have those leaders that want to give you the tools to be successful in your leadership job and your management job, whatever the role may be, and at the same time, that balance or that satisfaction between who you are here and outside the wall. So kudos to
Found the
her.
book, by the way, just for you, John. So the
What do you
book
got?
that I mentioned is called Off Balance. It's by Matthew Kelly, and it's
Okay.
called Off Balance: Getting Beyond the Work-Life Balance Myth to Personal and Professional Satisfaction. So everything that I described in a book. And hey, it's not for everyone. Like some people are going to think about it as balance, and that's a-okay. And I'm not here to bash it, but what I found is what people start to do is a balance of time versus a balance of what they enjoy. And so it's I can only do this versus I wish I was doing more of that. When you hear that kind of statement, it tells me that you're sacrificing your satisfaction for the sake of balance and time. And I think balance, what that book argues, again, not to go too far, is like
No, that's all right. Go
what
ahead.
that book argues is it's not about balance of time or balance of resources, but it's a balance of enjoyment and
Mhm.
satisfaction. And so sometimes they're even, and that's great. Other times you want to spend more time with your family and less time at work. So you're going to prioritize, hey, I got to pick up my kids. So I'm going to seek out a world or a role that allows me to spend more time with my kids, but still have a paycheck that I'm happy with. You find
A
that world.
and it may evolve from one day to the next
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's
for
ever
the same
evolving.
person.
Yeah, it's not just the seesaw, but there is kind of there's a greater analogy there that I don't have.
Uh, yeah, and the thing listen, anything that I write, anything I share, anything I say on here, it's never prescriptive.
Right. That's my hope.
These are all ideas, these are all our own considerations. I know for myself, the way that I think today might not be the same tomorrow, same for you.
Yep.
You know, the what we're trying to share here is the best information that we have, the best opinions that we have. But everybody's gonna have their different things. Some people are just gonna go to work and they're just gonna want the paycheck and that's it, you know. Everybody's different. So
Yeah.
anything that we put out there is just kind of an idea for consideration. That's the word I always like to throw out there. Anything I share is just for your consideration. Think about it in different ways to see what works best for you.
Right.
But now, Connor, jumping into the book, why
Yeah.
don't you introduce the book and give us some background on the book and how you came across the book?
Yeah, let's do it. So this book is called Endless Customers, and it's frankly, John, to when I was first on your podcast, it's They Ask You Answer 3.0. And so the title is Endless Customers, a proven system to build trust, drive sales, and become the market leader. Now, the original book is by Marcus Sheridan. This book is by Marcus, and Marcus is a partner here at Impact, and he's a keynote speaker. He does a lot, but it's written by Marcus Sheridan and the team at Impact. And so what we found is over the years of coaching and training teams how to implement this, we've created this system called the Endless Customer System, all focused on what are the proven principles and frankly the pillars of a known and trusted brand. And so what this book dives into are four key pillars of a known and trusted brand. Number one being say what others aren't willing to say in your space. And I can share examples as we go. Show what others aren't willing to show, leaning a lot into video, but also just showing the background, the behind the scenes. Sell in a way that others aren't willing to sell. And again, coming back to what we talked about earlier of giving your customers more control of the buying experience. And then the fourth pillar is be more human than others are willing to be. And there's an
Mhm.
interesting twist within that of that doesn't mean avoid AI. It means how do we make it more accessible for humans at any time? So that's what the Endless Customers book and the system is all about are those four pillars. And we talk about how to implement those.
Can you, without giving away the store, but can you give a couple examples under each pillar, just considerations that go into that particular section?
Definitely. So we'll start with say what others aren't willing to say. And we kind of brought up this one already of Talking about cost and price is one of them. And it's more about educating your audience on how pricing works. How does financing work in your industry? Another example that would be critical here is talking about things like, can you create content around the problems within your industry? Things that are done incorrectly, things that you should look out for, the what happens if kind of questions. Buyers want to know that to avoid that buyer's remorse we spoke about. And so, how do we address these kinds of topics in a way that's going to drive customers to, they're going to go look it up, they're going to try to find it. And if you can educate them and get ahead of it, they're going to
Yeah.
trust you because they understand it more and more. When it comes to showing what others weren't willing to show, for me, it always has to start with, there's this concept of like the claims we make. Everyone says we have the best people, the best processes, the best materials, all these things. They put it all over their website and they say all these things. Very rarely do they actually showcase that. And so there's a concept of what we call a claims we make video that's actually showing the buyer, the customer, exactly how that comes to life. And there's this great example. It's a roofing company out of Myrtle Beach called Linta Roofing. And on their website, they have this "Are you the right fit for Linta" web like video that you can click right on their homepage. And what it goes through is, here's what our core values are, and here's how they come to life. So one of their core values is around education, and within the video, they start talking about, we're all in our sales process of helping you get educated. We have a learning center full of content and resources for you to learn about our roofing process, but also how the roofing industry is changing and evolving. So they actually bring it to life and showcase how their team does that. That's what showing what others aren't willing to show can look like. The other example I'd give is behind the scenes. There's this great story that we talk about within the book about a pool manufacturer who started showing videos of how they make fiberglass pools, which is kind of Marcus's background and his origin story of this system we've built. But he created these video series showing how a fiberglass pool gets made. And everyone in the industry said, whoa, 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 you can't show that. That's our secret sauce. But everyone knows it's Thousand Island dressing, right? And so they start showing
Yeah.
it, and all the buyers are saying, I want to see that. I want to understand how it works. There's that great show, How It's Made, of like, it shows how everything actually gets made. People want to see that, and they now want to buy from the brands that actually show them the cool things they want to understand. You got to show what others aren't willing to show.
Mhm.
When it comes to selling in a way others aren't willing to sell, the principle of self-service tools is really where I lean into. And so these self-service tools are, how do I give a buyer more control to move further down the funnel? The stat we always use is buyers on average across every industry, B2B, B2C, is they want to get about 80% of the way through the buying journey before they get in touch with your business. So a lot of that's happening before they contact you. And a big thing that customers want is the ability to pick their own journey a bit more. And so an easy example that I'll use is, and I'm using a lot of home improvement examples, but you know what? I've got a good like wacky B2B one that I'll share with you. So when it comes to self-service tools, it's things like a self-configurator. I want to buy, and this is a crazy example, I want to buy commercial mops for cleaning my hospital, for example. There's a customer that we worked with that did this. And they said, I want to be able to give my buyers the ability to build their mop kit. And so what they created was this tool that allowed them to pick and choose all of these different features and factors and build all these things to create the perfect package for what their hospital needs. For example, we need mops that we can clean the ceiling with versus mops for the floor. There's a difference in that buying experience. They wanted to be able to create their own package so that at the end you can say, and here's how much that's roughly going to cost. They saw a rocket ship of more leads coming through and more qualified people who said, yeah, this is what I need. I've already built it. And now it becomes what I like to call the don't screw it up sale, which is we're
Mhm.
showing up and they already kind of know what they want. We just have to validate it. The more you can give control back to your buyer, the more likely they are to become more qualified and qualify themselves versus wasting your salesperson's time with a tire kicker, but also to show what their intent is to buy. And that again goes B2B or B2C, but the goal is, how can you create this self-service experience to even to the point of, you don't need to fill out a form to book a call. You can actually schedule a call yourself. How do you create that experience? And when it comes to being more human, the fourth pillar, that's where AI can be a great tool for that. So one, it's how do we utilize like one-to-one video to showcase your people? But let's say I'm going out to your home, John, and I'm going to be doing some work on your home. I don't want you to be like, who's the guy that's going to knock on my door? I want you to meet me before you meet me. So I'm going to make a one-to-one video for you that's going to say, hey, I'm Connor. I'm going to be coming out to your home this afternoon. I wanted to introduce myself. Here's what you can expect when I'm at your home and what I'll need from you. All these things where you say, great, I can't wait to meet Connor. And I know when he's going to be here and what I should do to get ready. All these things make it more human. AI is where you can meet the buyer where they're at. So imagine, for example, and this is a simple one that many of us have probably seen, when it comes to utilizing AI as like a chat bot or a call, most people do their research outside of working hours because they're working. So it's like it's 9:30 at night, the kids just went to bed. Now I'm going to go look into, do I need a new roof or repairs or whatever in your home? Again, I use easy examples.
Yeah.
I'm going to do my research at night when I have time. Most of the salespeople aren't going to be sitting there at 9 p.m. waiting to hear from John about the roof that he wants to get. So instead, how can you create an experience that reaches them in real time that says, hey, tell me more about your upcoming project? There's tools out there that are allowing you to do this at 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, that you can meet the buyer where they're at. And that creates a more human experience. And it's not that you're hiding that it's a real person or not. You can say, hey,
Yeah.
I'm Connor's AI assistant. Tell me more about what your upcoming project is, and I can help you get started. Or you can opt in and wait for Connor in the morning.
Mhm.
90% of the time, they're going to say, I've got time right now. I want to do it. They're going to
Yeah.
go through, fill in some more info, and then you can say, hey, in the morning, Connor's going to reach out and give you a call. Here's the number you can expect it from. You're creating a more human experience because you're helping them meet the buyer where they are.
Yeah.
Those are some examples of how these four pillars come to life. There's a whole lot more in the book, but that's what this endless customer system is all about, is how do we help buyers? How do we meet buyers where they're at, adopt with the new buying behaviors, and help set the standard for your industry? And frankly, you're going to disrupt a lot of what's already happening in your industry too.
So, Connor, obviously, I'm a leadership performance coach,
Yep.
always interested in the leadership aspect of any kind of book that we're covering. So, how does that, aside from the business standpoint, not a sales, not a marketing leader, but just in general, leader of any kind, what kind of examples, what kind of lessons can they take away from this book?
I think it all comes back to the market that we look at today. And I'm not saying from a marketing, but as a leader, many of us in every industry are trying to stick with what's always worked. And what this book is designed to do is to help the business leader and other folks within the business too reflect on their business and say, are we the ones that are trying to hide in the cellar, or are we the ones that are trying to find the next frontier? And so for leaders, you need to be thinking about, I can't do the things that always used to work. And it's my decision now to say, am I going to go and challenge the ways I've traditionally done things? This book is designed to take that leader and give them the tools and the systems that they need to build the team that they'll need for the future, to create a better organization, and to create a better culture of performance that isn't dependent on outside people to make happen, because they're never going to know the business the way that you do. And so how do you empower your organization to be an industry leader and an industry disruptor? This book helps leaders do that.
And when's your book coming out?
Man, you ask me this as much as anyone else, and I would love to say I've got it in the works, but it's one of those things that I got to figure
Yeah.
out what it's going to be. But it's an aspiration of mine. And it's funny that you bring it up, because every once in a while someone else will ask and I'm like, man, there's enough folks that ask. But at the very least, I'm excited that my name is in this one and it allows me to be a part of it. But I think in the future it'll be something that keep your eyes out, John. One day it's going to be about Connor's book on here, and that'll be exciting too.
So when you say your name is in there, what did you contribute? Was it a case study, an example? What is your piece of this book?
So as we were writing this, I get to share a lot of examples, and there's a lot of great companies that we work with. Where I primarily focused is in the work that I'm doing right now. I tend to be, not to say seen as a sales example, but a lot of the presentations we give utilize the way that I run our sales process. And Impact likes to believe we drink our own champagne or eat our own dog food, whatever example you are of. We try to be the best example of this system for everyone. And we're not perfect at it either. There's still areas that we work on, but I spent a lot of time helping refine the sales part of this, of selling in a way that others aren't willing to sell. And so throughout, you'll hear different examples. And at the end, it's more of the, hey, shout out to the team. And this is where Connor gets listed as one of those folks. But the big focus that I had was helping make sure that this comes to life and reflects the actual examples that our team has, and that I can showcase myself as one that is. And what's exciting, and I think what makes it the most fun, John, is when people read the book and they come to learn more about working with Impact and how we can help your team implement this. They say, wow, you're doing exactly what the book said. It's just like what I imagined it would be. And so a lot of teams, when I go do sales trainings, they say, I want you to look at how Connor sold to us. This is the experience we want to create. That's the kind of story that happens. And it's this weird, you start to blush, and then you're also like, but that's pretty freaking cool. So those are the kinds of examples
Absolutely.
that I share.
Awesome. Um, and then just in starting to wrap up, what other books, I know you're a voracious reader, what other books have stood out to you over the last couple of years since we've spoken? Um,
Mm.
yeah, just kind of, I'm always looking for other ideas that people can focus on, other books that people can read. Anything you would recommend? What stands out?
Yeah, I'm looking over to the side here because I have my whole bookshelf over here, but there's a couple that stand out. As there's a new book that I just read that I really enjoyed, and there's a couple that I just read. I'll grab I'm gonna grab one for you,
Yeah,
John.
yeah, go for it.
Um, so the one that I read very recently is a book called Outgrow, and it just came out very recently. It's by Alex Goldfein, and I was given this book at a conference that I was attending, and this is, if people are watching, it's called Outgrow: How to Expand Market Share and Outsell Your Competition. And the beauty of this book is it's nothing you've never heard before. It's very foundational, and that's how most books are, right?
Mhm.
90% of these books
Yeah.
are built on the same principles you've always heard.
Yep.
But what I really appreciated about it was it took a 2025 view of, hey, following up with sales folks, and like, or as a salesperson, we're overcomplicating what works. You're not here to hit, like, volume is no longer the answer. And it talks about all these different principles, but I got to listen to the author speak, and it was just a really, it provided a ton of clarity with all the noise that's happening out there, not only in the sales world, but in like business growth world of, here's all these different tactics and strategies. And this was like, these are the foundational things many people forget. That was one that stood out very recently. The book that I always come back to, and I genuinely may have referred to this one the last time I was on here, but it's one that I have on my reread list every year. It's called Continuous Discovery Habits. Um,
Mm.
and the subtitle is Discover Products That Create Customer Value and Business Value. It's by Teresa Torres. I read this book when I was helping lead up a product team and learning how to like take in customer feedback. And what I found is that the habits that it discusses are much beyond just products and building a program. It's much more about, how do you take, refine, and improve based on the feedback you're receiving. And the book, I don't see enough people talk about it, but it does use products as a great example. But um, this is one of the quotes on the back, and I think it's a good one. If you haven't had the good fortune to be coached by a strong leader or a product coach, this book can help fill that gap and set you on the path to success for your business. It's one of those books that I'm like, I wish everyone read this so that they could think about the way that you can do discovery conversations better. Those have been two. The last one that I would put is Never Split the Difference.
Mhm.
And I just reread that one, and it's just this like reminder of, it's all about, let me make sure I describe it right, about like hostage negotiations and how those principles apply in the business world. And it's like, look, I'm not going to take it word for word, but what I will do
Yeah.
is understand, how do I mirror in emotional conversations and take
Yes.
principles that go so much further. And it's not at the stake of, hey, my wife is kidnapped and I've got to
Yeah.
get her back. It's not that kind of game, but it's more of a, hey, we have heated conversations every day. How can I utilize these tools? That's the third one, and that's like a layup, but one that we talk about all the time.
Yeah, and it's interesting when you say, that's about hostage negotiations, but there's lessons to be drawn from everything. I've had a few people on here that came on to discuss novels. So that's not the first go-to book when you would think about life and leadership, but whether it's their story, the underlying story of the novel itself, there's always something that's applicable to my side of the world, to that leadership side, that development side, the learning side. So, no, I appreciate all those recommendations. And then finally, now in wrapping up, this will probably be out mid-May.
Cool.
What else do you have going on? I don't know. I only mentioned that timeline because I know you do a lot of events.
Sure.
But if there's anything that you want to share, anything I might not have asked, anything at all, the floor is yours.
Yeah, so if people are interested in Endless Customers, it just went live about 3 weeks ago. It's available wherever you buy a book. We have our conference twice a year. The next one's going to be in Hartford, Connecticut. It's August 18th to the 20th. It's the 3-day learn how all of this comes to life experience where we are really speaking as much to the system as we are, here's the teams doing it at the highest level. That would be one great thing. And if you're interested, John, anyone that listens to the book, just have them reach out to me and I can get them discount codes and make it easy, because the book leads community is one that I love. So whatever I can do to help folks say, I'm interested in this, I want to learn more about it, let's make that happen. Otherwise, I was just on a big, events tour, but in May, a lot of small group speaking, and then a couple of keynote presentations coming up soon, which is pretty wild, but it's taken off there. So a lot of that, and yeah, more running all the time. As you said, I've got a half marathon probably right around when this comes out, and then diving into the summer of On Your Feet.
Yeah, absolutely. So is that does it have to be corporate registrations? Does it have to be group
Could be an
registrations for the
individual. Yeah, it could be if it's just, hey, I'm interested. I'm a leadership performance coach in the
Mm,
Connecticut area. I'd love to
that's
swing by, John.
that's
No.
where I was
Um,
going. That's where I was going.
it's
Wanted to stop
it's
by
an
and check it out.
individual sign up. If you say, hey, I want to bring a couple members of our team, we can obviously make that happen. But it's designed where anyone and everyone can come in and learn, and it's in a pretty accessible, easy area. But the goal is, we want everyone to learn and believe in this, whether you work with impact or not. We
Yeah,
believe
yeah,
that this is a system that every business around the world should be able to implement. And it's the one that's about helping your buyers. And so that's what we all are in the business of. So yeah, if anyone's interested, John, it's individual signups, but there's some discounts if you bring your friends.
awesome. And again, Connor shared the book "Endless Customers: A Proven System to Build Trust, Drive Sales, and Become a Market Leader" by Marcus Sheridan. Brother, thank you so much for coming back again.
Always a blast, John. Thanks again, my friend.
Great conversation. Thank you for sharing everything. And it's again, it's good. Just you and I had met in 2020 when you had interviewed me about coming on as a member of the American
Wasn't
Marketing
that wild?
Association. That's well, I mean, um, it was incredible just to meet you then. And again, our tenure on the committee didn't overlap. I mean, especially because it was COVID.
Right.
Um, but just seeing your progression, your growth, your presence, just keeps evolving, developing. And again, that genuineness, that authenticity of your concern and your support for people that are out there in the community just following what you're doing, or that need your services, or that need that kind of support, is just great to see. I always tell you this every time I see you on here, or if I comment on one of your posts, just that I appreciate the work you're doing, how you put it out there. And just again, this all goes back to what you said just a couple minutes ago about having discovering and conversations and just talking to each other. I think even though everything that you work in is marketing and sales, there's a lot that moves like the human condition and how we can learn from each other and how we can share value with each other. So I think it goes beyond the specific industry that you're working in. So thank you so much for all of that, everything you share.
Absolutely, John. Thank you again for having me, and all the kind words too. It's exciting stuff for wherever we're going to go next. Let's make sure we do it together.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if there's anything that I might have missed, we're limited on time. I tend to drag my guests down rabbit holes, but let me know and I'll reach out to Connor with any questions you think I should have asked for additional insight, guidance, knowledge, wisdom, whatever it may be. In the meantime, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care. Bye.